Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brittany Hutchinson. I'm a curator here at the Virginia Museum of History and Culture. And thank you for joining us for our Curators Work program. And this is a program where curators open up the doors to our museum and our work to share collection ideas and stories to help us tell stories about history in Virginia. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. Instead of presenting collection items or things of that nature, we're actually going to involve ourselves in a really great conversation between two figures who I think are really important to understanding the impact of what history actually does. A lot of times, historians tell the dates, the names, and the sort of flattened stories of history. But the important things we want to pull from our stories is the human connection that we all have. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our narrators. We have Elizabeth Johnson Rice and Elizabeth Thalhimer Smartt. These are two lovely ladies who have a unique story, and it begins actually way back in 1960. On February 22nd, 1960, the Richmond 34, or 34 students from Virginia Union University, staged a sit-in at Thalhimer's department store to help desegregate their lunch counter. From that event, uh, a new dawn of how civil rights activism in Richmond began. And I'm joined by these two ladies because they're connected by this historical event. Elizabeth Johnson Rice is one of the members of the Richmond 34, and Elizabeth Thalhimer Smartt is the granddaughter of William Thalhimer Jr., the owner and the CEO of Thalhimers. So before we begin, I think I tried my best to find ways to describe these two ladies, but I think we really are going to learn who they are through their stories and through their conversation. And just for everyone watching out there, I'll be referring to them as Little E, which is Elizabeth Thalhimer Smartt, and Big E, which is Elizabeth Johnson Rice. And this is a nickname that they have for each other. So they really allowed us to use these nicknames to further engage with their history. So without any further ado, we're going to get started. So thank you both for joining us today, and it's lovely to see you again.
Our pleasure.
Thank you, Brittany. I'm glad we're not considered items from the collection.
Absolutely not. Far more dynamic. So I want to start with our first question. In 2004, the two of you met at an event that Big E staged and really organized to celebrate the Richmond 34 and to mark that point in history. So Big E, can you tell us a little bit about your perspective and your work in creating that event and meeting Little League?
Okay. Well, so thank you for having me, and I'm so happy to be here with Little League. And 1960 is, of course, when it all started. But I after all of it, we got arrested in 1960, and years went by, and many things happened, but we were never brought back to the campus or called or anything. And so I said, this was very important what happened in 1960. And why is nobody remembering this? Why, it was a big event in Richmond, part of their part of their history. And so I was teaching in Washington D.C. at that time, and I came home from school that day, and just all of a sudden I got this revelation: you need to start a commemoration march to remember what you all did in 1960. And it was so real. It was like a voice telling me, you need to call, you need to do this right now. And so I got on the phone and I called the police, told them who I was, and they would say, oh yeah, I remember what happened in 1960. I said, I want to do a commemoration march. And so he gave me the okay, and he turned me on to the park police and so on. And I finally I just was taking the command. I wasn't asking permission so much as telling you I'm going to do this if you help me or not, whether you help me or not. So anyhow, it did go through. So 2004, we walked, a few of us walked from Lombardy all the way down to Thalhimers on Broad Street. And one of the reasons it was so important in 2004 is because I found out after I had this great revelation, they were getting ready to demolish the store. They were getting ready to tear it down. And that would have been, I said, I have to see the store one more time. And so we got there, and that day it was really cold, and we broadcasted as much as we could, and some people knew about it, not a whole lot because it really was kind of last minute. And so after I got a proclamation, and I did certificates for many of the civil rights activists there at that time. And after we had spoken, and I spoke, my brother spoke, and a lot of leaders in the city spoke, got the mayor's proclamation. After it was all over, and we figured it was a good day. We had a nice turnout, and people were honking their horns and wondering what's going on. After it was all over, this beautiful young lady and her husband came up to me and said, "I really like what you said and what you did, and I'm just so sorry you have not been acknowledged all these years." And so she said, "My name's Elizabeth, but I'm the granddaughter of William Thalhimer's, the owner of the store that arrested you. And, I'm just I know you all have not been acknowledged." And I said, "Oh, William Thalhimer's." And it was like, oh, I did something for him because I had done certificates for all the leaders in the civil rights movement. And I had done one for him because had it not been him arresting us and making that happen, things would not have changed. And so she said right there in 2004, "You know what, when you have your 50th anniversary, we're going to make that big. And the city of Richmond's going to know about it." And little Lee was true to her word. We worked on it in the background. We had meetings, monthly meetings, and then it got to be weekly meetings, and everybody got involved. But little Lee was really the spearhead of all those meetings and got the businessmen and other people of influence to come and rally behind this.
So, Lily, let's start to you. Tell us about what it was like to go to this event and to hear that Biggie had honored your grandfather.
So I was researching a book that I was writing about Thalhimers and the history of the store, which covered 150 years of history in my family and in Richmond. So it was kind of this vast project. And I got to the civil rights era, which at that point, the store was about 120 years old. And, I had all these stories from my grandfather, and I'd interviewed him and had like a binder this thick of interviews with him. But it occurred to me that I just don't have the whole story. Like I was searching for other pieces of the story that I didn't know. I mean, he had told me multiple times about, the sit-ins and their response to it, which he felt really personally was very significant to him in terms of, he ran the store for a number of years, but that stood out to him as one of the sort of pivotal moments in its history. For a lot of reasons. It's hard to summarize, but I wanted to put together like the holistic story. And I saw this tiny little blurb in the paper about a commemoration march that was going to be on February 22nd in 2004. And I thought, I'll just go and just kind of observe and be in the background and hear what they have to say. So then when I got there and I heard Elizabeth speak, and she actually didn't say this when she was talking a minute ago, but she presented this award during her remarks at the end of it, which is why I went up, because I was like, well,
I didn't know that.
I'll go up and accept it on behalf of my grandfather. But it occurred to me how unusual that was for him to be thanked. And I just thought, I really want to hear her side of this story. I really want to hear her perspective. And so we went out to lunch not long after that. Actually, I found the award because I kept it.
Yeah, that was awesome. I put together.
And it was the BPAWS Award, which stood for Be Part of the Solution, which is this organization that Elizabeth was starting. And it says presented to the family owners of Thalhimers, and on February 22nd, 2004. So I took this to my grandfather and we talked about it, and he was pretty staggered by it, even though he was very old and sort of in decline. But it was meaningful to him because he worked very hard to integrate Thalhimers. And he told me there was no way he could have done it without the sit-ins or some perpetuating event happening, because it would have gone directly against the cultural and social mores of that time. And he was afraid it would have actually taken the business with it. So he needed some kind of precipitating event in order to integrate the store, which that was interesting to me, that what you did, he
Mhm.
needed in order to be able to
Isn't that
integrate,
something?
which is something he wanted. It was just, it went against the times.
And who thought you'd find that little bitty article?
Yeah.
And little article got you to come and see. Let me see what this is all about. They're talking about, was Thalhimers mentioned in the article?
It was.
So you said, let me go see what's going on. So
So
that,
I wanted to kind of circle back, because we think of, you know, the arrest that happened in such a it was happening across the country, and it sort of kicked off this revolution, I think. And we think of the arrest and we think of what happens on the outside, but and from talking to both of you, I know that the minute that arrest happened, your grandfather sort of went into action on his part. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Elizabeth or Lily?
Sure. Yeah, so I can tell it exactly the way he told it, because he told it to me a lot of times. So I remember it really clearly. But he said it was a Saturday, and he got a call at home, and he was told there are students from Virginia Union University sitting down at the counters, asking to be served. What should we do? And he said, I'm coming. Like, hold on, I'm coming downtown. And so when he got there and he saw what was going on, he assessed the situation, and it was already had grown. And there were hundreds of people that had marched.
There were about 200 people that came down that day.
So there were 34 that sat in at 2 different locations in 2 different restaurants, but there were hundreds of people outside the store. And so he knew that something needed to be done in order to close the store. And yes, he did say to the police, I don't want any violence above all. But if they, please ask them politely if they would like to leave.
Mm-hmm.
If they leave,
Mhm.
then we close the store. If they do not leave, then you can arrest them as per the law.
Well, what they did at that time, so just, they came in, we saw the wagons pull up in front, and we saw the police officers get out with the German Shepherd dogs, and they came on into the store, and they came in with all the force, and they said out loud, like, in a sense they yelled, but it really wasn't one of those. We'd seen some really terrible things on television in the days before, weeks before, and they said, you students are going to be under arrest if you don't leave right now. And then he waited to see what we all looked at each other and didn't say anything. And then he said, you're going to be arrested for trespassing if you don't leave now. No one moved. And then about the third time, he said, we're going to be taking you to jail now. And so he nodded, kind of tapped you on your shoulder and trying to help you get off that bar stool that was right there, lunchroom counter stool. And we just followed them. We followed them out. But it wasn't, they were respectful to us. And I often wondered why. And we were very respectful to them. They were respectful to us. And we followed them out into the wagon, and they took us to jail.
Mm-hmm. And so, Elizabeth or Lily, your grandfather got right on the phone and called Oliver Hill and sort of did these things behind the scenes. And you mentioned before how the work that he began to sort of initiate the desegregation and the integration of the stores. Can you share a little bit of that?
Sure. I think it's also important to know, and not very many people know this, that he had already integrated some facilities within the store. He had already integrated the employee lunchroom, and the hair salon had been integrated, which was a pretty big deal in the 50s. So this he saw as, well, first of all, he wanted to know more about what was going on from the perspective of the Black community and of leaders in the Black community. So I believe he reached out to Oliver Hill Sr. and, he came downtown and they met and talked. And he was meeting with other leaders in the Black community. I wish I knew their names. This is all anecdotal because he was just able to tell me as an older person what he recalled, and he couldn't remember all of the names. But he said he also met with the president and CEO of Miller and Rhodes, which was the big store across the street. And they met in the back seat of a car in their shared parking deck so that they would not be overheard, because these were highly confidential conversations about how to integrate both major stores at the same time. Grandpa said, I was not going to go it alone. We needed to be a united front, and then we felt other stores would follow.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think this was particularly easy. I don't think there was a lot of agreement among executives, but he did it anyway. He said this was poignant to me. He said, we didn't choose to be born Jewish. No one chooses to be born black or white. This was just the right thing to do. He really felt strongly this was the right thing to do. But he also was a businessman. His primary job was to run this business. And after 120 years, to make sure it didn't go under. And he had a mostly white clientele. So would this anger the white clientele? How much was he willing to change quickly in order to keep the business afloat while also doing what he felt was right? It was a really delicate balance.
I just like to interject that I have family members that worked in Thalhimers, and they related to me how everybody loved her grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
That he was so caring and concerned about people being treated fairly. And that's why I think Thalhimers was one of the stores that they decided to integrate or pick it. And rather, Milburn Roads gave an air of not really wanting you there, and don't bother to come in unless you really have to. But there was, even though there were certain things you couldn't do at the store, there still was. Well, they had the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus and all of that in the windows, which was, people knew about that in other parts of Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
So the atmosphere had been created.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that he had a lot to do with that. And many people loved him. They even gave him a nickname, Uncle Billy or something.
Mr. Billy, they called
Yeah,
him Mr. Billy.
So I think, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think he worked as quickly as he could. Like some people have sort of challenged this. Well, why did it take a whole year? But what he told me was there were a lot of changes that had to actually be structurally implemented. They had to change all the bathrooms. They had to change the layout of the whole store. They had to change all of the fitting rooms, the water fountains. Everything had to be redesigned. And in order to have all of that take place and to integrate the, entire, it was a 6-story building. They took over the course of a year to implement, plan, make all of these changes. But within a year of the sit-ins, the store was fully integrated, as was Miller and Rhodes. And the way that I wish I knew more about this, but the way that they symbolically showed the community that all were welcome was that my grandparents invited leaders from the Black community to dine with them in the Richmond room. And the head of Miller and Rhodes did the same in the tea room. And they purposefully did not want this in the media. They wanted it to just be quietly implemented so that people were welcome and just seamlessly entered. But also, I think that's why a lot of people forgot this story, because it wasn't a big story and it wasn't all over the news. It just quietly happened. And thank God it was peaceful.
So I want to touch on that a little bit more, how we talked about how there wasn't this sort of, big press push or media attention on this event. In our previous conversations, we discussed sort of how a lot of times what we think of as a civil rights activist event is meant to have the sort of the violence and the spectacle that we're used to. But because, I think you all saying that it was so peaceful, do you all think that affected how much press was surrounding the event?
Well, I would like to speak to that effect, and that is the very fact that it was nonviolent, like Martin Luther King, who had come to the campus, had told us. It was nonviolent, and you had the leadership at Thalhimers putting forth that we want this to be nonviolent. And it was like it was so nonviolent that in the future, the next years, the next presidents that had a chance to let the students know what had happened there in 1960, they were almost afraid to rock the boat because, well, I mean, this was nonviolent and it was done and things changed. So why bring it up again? So that could have been in the back of their minds. Why rock the boat? Because things are fine right now. They don't really need to know because some of these students may have said, well, you should be telling us. We should know about this. So that could be one of the things. But I think they failed to realize the impact that at least it had on me and others. We did this. We made history. We're not even in the books. Nobody's talking about us. Nobody's giving us an award. Thank you for what you did. And it wasn't until 2004. After that, I would hold a yearly meeting with a Dr. Hilton, who was historian at the school, and we would hope many people would come, but maybe you get 10, maybe you get 20, but never the administration promoting it. And I think because of the lack of that, many students have come to me years that were there at the school during that time and were incensed because they never knew about it. No one talked about it. It wasn't a part of Virginia Union's history, which it should be. And to this day, I'm sorry to say, we're still not on the calendar as a date to be remembered. We're still fighting for that recognition. So I mean, that's what I have to say about that. But for the 50th anniversary, we had a great time. Okay.
I think that's a really great point to bring forward, is how, because the event wasn't something that was such a spectacle and that it was peaceful, that it hasn't landed in the center or in a prominent place in Richmond's history. But I think honestly, that's kind of what the two of you have been doing together, which I think is a great time to talk about how your friendship kind of formed after that meeting in 2004. I don't know who wants to go first, but how did you guys get to this point where you have nicknames, you talk all the time, and you've been doing this work together?
All right, I just have to say something that I feel moved to say. This is an incredible woman who is a force for good.
Yeah.
And I do believe, okay, so it's important to note, and I will just say this really briefly, even though it's a whole story on its own. She physically died. Her body died a year before that, right?
Well, in 2000.
Okay, so a few years before that event, she died, and she was dead for 6 minutes.
Yeah, they pronounced me dead, and my husband was sobbing, and I had experiences on the other side, and it's just like you say, it wasn't my time. It really was not my time. And when I did come back, everybody was so glad. And I've been trying. Little Lee's been trying. I've been trying, but I knew the timing wasn't right. But the timing is right now to put this in writing and let people know the whole story. So I'm really more compelled to talk my book rather than write my book. So that's being done now. But yeah, that let me know that you're not just here to be here. You were saved for a purpose, and others need to know why you're here. And even since that time, I realized that I've had a lot of close calls, and as I get older, and I guess they need to know that we're about 40 years difference in age. I'm getting ready to have a birthday in October. I'll be 82.
All right.
And she's like my little sister or child. But we're the best of friends. And we've maintained that friendship, over the
years. It's been 18 years.
18 years. I've been at her house and slept at her house, and she's sitting on my living room couch right now. So that tells you something.
But it's amazing to me that she found and distilled her purpose so powerfully and said, I'm here for a reason, and I'm going to, she's a teacher. I mean, you are a
Mhm.
teacher,
Yeah.
whether it's your profession or just who you are.
Right.
But to teach about this event that happened, and that's how I learned, because she had this commemoration and she spoke about what happened, and I learned more about her experiences. And then I was able to sort of, we pieced together what happened based on what I was told by my grandfather.
Yeah.
And then we thought, well, okay, for the 50th, we will communicate this to the whole city. And I felt really strongly about making it into an event that was powerful enough that people would listen and hear the story, because I see it as a story about how change can happen if people are all willing to sort of be cogs in a wheel that turns together.
Mhm.
I mean, we all play a little tiny part in this story and how it moved forward, and we're still doing that. I mean, I think we agree that like the story is not over.
Oh no, not by a long shot.
And
I mean, we're not just friends for it, just to be friends.
Uh-huh.
And I think we had a talk not too long ago with you, Brittany, and I didn't realize that I was affected by it, because it let me realize that. Well, I've joked about this in the past with Little League, when the whole political scene, and I said, well, I'm like a Reverend Warnock from Georgia, and you're like Ossoff, and we're Jewish and African American, and they were friends in winning those seats they were looking for. And so I said, well, they came together and they formed a friendship and they're forging ahead. So I said, well, we're together and we are forging ahead very peacefully. And who knows what can happen in the future,
Mhm.
because voices need to be heard from another side that let people know that being intolerant of another person is just not acceptable in
Mhm.
this day and age. And we show what tolerance is all about. We
Mhm.
go beyond tolerance to friendship and real concern and care and compassion for one another.
So I think that we had a talk. I want to say one of our earlier talks at the beginning of the summer. We've talked so much. We've been just chatting for the whole summer, which has been excellent. And I remember Little E, you brought up how you were someone who wants to sort of kind of stay in the background. And you mentioned before how your grandfather wanted to invite the community in, but didn't want to make a public scene about it, wanted to be authentic, wanted to be personal. And I would hope that, or I would like it, hopefully, if you feel comfortable, to kind of share your perspective and how you protect this friendship that you have with Biggie.
yeah, that's really important to me, because I feel like it's so easy to see things, I mean, no pun intended, in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not a situation of black and white. It's an incredibly sort of nuanced friendship. It's not, I'm not a poster child for reconciling with. I mean, I just feel like it could be made into something that that ignores the fact that we're just friends.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've gotten to be really close. We talk all the time, and it's mostly not about 1960 anymore.
Yeah.
But I actually, I feel like our friendship has kind of taken on something different. This is interesting to me. It's kind of become, we don't talk so much about reconciling between races anymore.
Mm-mm.
I feel like we're so far past that.
Well, I think we're really showing each other how to live our best life.
Yes.
And on all the intersections that come within it, within family dynamics, we're there for each other. We support each other in that, just like everybody else does. But some of them don't go as deep as we do. And, we many times try to get to the root of it. And like, I've got some things that Little Lee and I are talking about that I don't even know about, that some fears I've got that people don't know that I have. And I remember her saying one day, I think I can help you with that. So, I said, really? So it goes beyond what you see.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I love that. It goes beyond what you see.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's important to say, and I'm not exactly even sure where I'm going with this, but
We never are.
We never are. The joy of this friendship. We really are never sure. But here's what I'm thinking, Biggie. So we've come from this period of very masculine energy.
Mm-hmm.
The entire idea that we were segregated as a country, as a South, as Richmond, I mean, it's unthinkable to me. But it all comes from this like very masculine sort of power driven idea of here's how we're going to maintain control over a population and, some just really hard edged, just terrible ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a different energy that we share that we feel like is significant right now, that is a very feminine energy that's incredibly powerful, but a totally different system of power, which is kind of related to leading with partnerships, not one leader rising up, but the two of us doing things together and taking things as they come and trying to not create like a big power structure, but to sort of lead by example and not know where things are heading next, not have some grand plan, but just to sort of work together to see where we can make more good happen. And it is like a very feminine energy, which I feel like we're not talking about being different anymore or anything like that. We're talking about really how similar.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it's such a wonderful experience just to talk to each other and experience what we're going through, that others need to know that they also can have the same experience.
Yes.
And Brittany, this is not just by a coincidence that the Elizabeths are on your program today when Queen Elizabeth of a great monarch, has passed. And everybody is talking about Elizabeth. And here you are. You brought it down to two Elizabeths. Share her name. And who's to say we can have an influence just like she did, just by being ourselves and letting other people know. And she was a powerful woman, even in her 20s, she was princess, I think. She was talking about fairness and kindness and this type of thing, and didn't perpetuate colonization and the meaning of other people. She was even talking that back then. And she's really so you never know. You never know which road you're going to go down. The yellow brick road may not always be yellow. It may branch off into another thing and then come back again. But the thing is, it's exciting to realize or to find out where is God going to take us. And I'm not afraid to say it. God is taking us somewhere great where other people can benefit. Not just we will benefit, but others can benefit. And you've been a conduit, Brittany, just by you brought us together. We had one idea, and it's a metamorphosis is occurring. We're right now we were caterpillars, and now we're almost butterflies.
And this has really been this sort of the development of this program. I think at first had a very sort of like, here's what we're going to do. It was so structured, so organized. And the more we talked, it became apparent that what we wanted to pull out of the history is the humanity and what, we're all here to do. And I think that's a really important thing for just being a historian, is to understand the things, the dates, the names, all the stuff that we memorize have human consequences. And when we're taking a moment to look at how history connects us all, I think what you two have been doing, both developing this very real friendship and then using the friendship and using your voices to tell this story, that's what history is about. So I really see you both. There's a famous public historian named Carl Becker, and he wrote this piece called "Every Man a Historian." Well, we say every person at this point, but and you have these histories in you, and so what I would sort of want to ask at this point is, how do you all see yourselves situated in this long legacy of this history? Like, where do you see yourselves? Where do you see your roles in this?
Well, I'll
That's a
just
deep
say
question. Sorry.
Elizabeth, little Lee started it when she dedicated a chapter in her book, Finding Thalhimers, to the other Elizabeth. That we didn't know how that one chapter was going to generate everything that you're seeing today. But really, she's always a catalyst. She may not want to be in the public that much. Boy, is she a catalyst.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I think that it's just really unfolded so naturally too. It's not like we ever really planned
No, I
any of
didn't
this.
plan it.
I mean, we said for the 50th, we're going to really go big. And we did. We had 1,500 school children assembled with a panel discussion of participants that were all, Richmond 34. And, I represented the Thalhimer family. And we talked about what happened that day to bring it alive for kids. We had John Legend come and perform. We had a huge luncheon at the Marriott with business leaders from across the community to tell current business leaders how business was a big part of change. And, now we go and speak to schools. We've gone to, all kinds of things.
But you brought the Richmond 34 back to Richmond, all expenses paid, and they couldn't sleep anywhere there in Richmond then. They stayed at the Marriott, and then their food was paid for, their trip was paid for. That was quite an undertaking. And like I say, there are not that many of us left right now. There's some, but in terms of participation, it's going, it's dwindling. But yeah, it's I forgot what the question was.
I just want to say she has been tireless in telling the story
going to the school
generously and answering any questions that come up, even the hard ones, especially the hard ones from kids that want to know, it's not static, this history. These kids are living a lot of this now, as we're talking about even, race and how it's talked about in schools, the history of this country and the difficult parts of the history that we haven't really been honest about before. So I feel like we're all talking about this in new ways, and Biggie has been really generous every day with sharing that story and kind of allowing me to be a part of that story, inviting me to tell that story with her. Like, it's been a very, community conversation experience that is continuing. And
speaking about community, because of that, because community, we're talking to schools and what have you, and because we have not been talked about that much from where we started, other people have embraced us, such as the Richmond Flying Squirrels. And since they brought me in, I didn't know what I was coming in there for, but they said, we'd like to talk to you. I said, we want to pick you up and bring you by. And the Richmond Flying Squirrels, which is a minor league baseball team here, wants to come and wants to talk to you. We're trying to make a decision. So to make a long story short, I went to see them, and the manager, Purcell was there, and some of the players, and they said, well, we're deciding whether we have to do something at the top of the diamond, because the Native American brave that used to be there was taken down, and there's been nothing there on the top. They said, we're thinking about a mural going up there in recognition of what you and 34 of your former members did. And he said, what do you think about that? I said, well, before I even talked about it, he wanted me to tell the story to the guys that were there. Now here I am. I'm only woman in the room talking to all these white minor league team members and administrators, and there had some tears coming down because I was telling them how I felt. I always tell my story with feeling because I feel it. And I don't know how it'll affect other people. I mean, I've had kids in elementary schools crying and coming to me and hugging me and saying, "You're my hero," and that type of thing. Not that I'm looking for it, they just feel something they never felt before. And so he said, "You see what I'm telling you guys? We need to represent, we need to keep the legacy going of the Richmond 34." So that's why they have at the top of the diamond the Richmond 34 legacy, the legacy of the Richmond 34. And they're trying to keep it going. And one of their missions is to end racism. Well, that's what we've been doing. Lily and I have been kind of showing that by our actions. And so now we have another ally in this whole thing. And they made me their ambassador of goodwill for the community. So don't know where that'll go, but it's all part of this big picture. And it is a big picture. The canvas is not complete yet.
So I think that you used the word legacy, and that really stood out to me as something that aligns with what the two of you are building. So I'm very curious. And speaking of crying, you made me cry last time.
I didn't know, Brittany. So I tried to hold them back as long as I could.
And I'm trying to hold off the hard questions until the end in case it happens. But I really want to sort of hear what both of you have to say about the legacy of what you're doing. I mean, this friendship is one thing, but the work that you do together is also so beautiful. Can you kind of, hopefully without all of us breaking out into tears, if you could share what you want your legacies to be, in forwarding this history?
You go first, Lily.
The hard one, Brittany.
I know, but it's such, you guys have done such great work, and I think I'll talk while you think, so you can buy some time.
Well, I'm forever moving, but I know I've got to get my book out. Okay, that's one thing that's got to be done. The other thing is that what we are sharing with you, and hopefully others will hear this what we're doing today. But it's this kind of thing that we can talk about on various issues in the form of a kind of a podcast that comes out on a weekly or monthly basis, something like that. But I see us projecting what we're doing into, it doesn't have to be a visual thing. It could be a podcast of a sense, but the Elizabeths, I mean, you already got the title there. The Elizabeth, so I can see it going to another level. I mean, I don't necessarily, I mean, I had a podcast once about Be the Star You Are that didn't allow people to have talk and exchange. But I think if we allow people to talk and the two of us there, who knows where that could go.
So I feel like now she's going big with this. She's going big now. We were already going to record a song together. We've got a lot. She's very ambitious. And what I'm thinking, Brittany, when you ask that question is you're going to laugh at me, going small. It is about the tiny connections that you make on a daily basis with unexpected people. I feel like the legacy is open yourself to these experiences of just meeting someone that you didn't think you'd ever meet. I mean, I never really thought I'd be best friends with an 81-year-old sit-in protester from 1960. I mean, that's not, it wasn't really part of my narrative. But that's the beauty of life is you can connect with people and they change you. I'm not the same person I was when I met her in 2004. And it's because
and same here
of our friendship. I mean, Now we're all going to cry again. But
yeah.
No, we're going to keep it
we're not
together.
going to cry.
Let it happen.
But I feel like it's about the legacy of like teaching my children, be open to these experiences of meeting someone that we couldn't really be more different on paper, really. I mean, our race, our faith, our age. I mean, we're both women, but like, just open yourself to the experience of getting to know another person's story intimately. I mean, we really have gotten to know this story inside out, and now it's telling. I mean, we've become different because we've told each other our stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that continues, and that I can show that to my kids, you know, like when we go to Big E's, like they know who you are, you call, you check on them, you know, sometimes we call from carpool, like she's a part of our life, a part of our family. And I think that's the legacy that I'm leaving, is that these are powerful connections that change us in unpredictable ways, and that we can become better and impact people, you know, for the greater good by just letting this friendship kind of unfold.
All right, but
okay, now what are we doing?
But you're talking about doing it in a small way. How do you get to these other people and these other situations in a small way? You know, they got to know that we're here.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do that in a small way?
By talking to Brittany on Curators.
Well, I'm happy that this.
So we would have a podcast coming through the museum on a regular basis, maybe monthly.
Just call me up. I'll make it happen. We'll figure it out. Because I want to, you know, I can't even express how great it's been talking to the both of you. And as a curator, I've learned so much from just hearing you all just talk. And I felt like this is such an important thing to see, is having these very human connections. And the last time we were talking, when we all started crying, we were talking about the spiritual sort of the realization that what we're here to do is so important. And I know this is the question that might do it. So brace yourselves.
Okay.
I thought
coming from that space, and you're talking about the feminine energy and sort of the spiritual realm. What does this mean to both of you? Like what does it mean to you to have this relationship and connection to this history?
What does it mean?
Mm-hmm. What does it mean to you? Like,
well,
how does
I am trying to grow spiritually and improve my spiritual understanding and being awakened more and more by recognizing that's within, and we all have it. By getting out of the way and just being me, the real me. I've when I was married to my husband, and he would always say, "You need to get out there and speak more because they need to hear you." I said, "Well, no, you're the preacher." And so the older I get, the more I realize I do need to say something and need to speak out more. So, I just like to say, even my daily life, I have everything I do, I try to make spirit a part of it because I can't do it by myself. You know, I've tried it by myself, and usually when I put spirit involve the presence, whatever you call it, in everything I do, not just now and then, but in everything you do. Everything comes out so much better, so much clearer. And that's what I need to impart to other people. What I try to, although we talk about other things, it's realizing who you are, spiritual. Who are you? You're not Brittany. You are a soul. You are a beautiful soul being guided by a power that you don't even know about. And so that's where I find myself going. But you can't go there with everybody. You know, everybody is not ready for that. But even they're ready. There's a spark of it in all of us. So it's just a matter of tapping that, and I do that with a call I'm on every morning, and they they well, let's see what they call me, Mama Elizabeth. So there's Elizabeth again. Anyhow, I say, let's see what Mama Elizabeth thinks. So, I just try to give the truth. Stand in your truth and justice, whatever it is.
So I'm going to dovetail with that, because I feel like we are experiencing a lot of the same things through different times in our life and different ways. But it occurred to me, Brittany, that when I was studying the store and what it was based on, they really based the entire 150-year history of the business on 4 things. It was about honesty, integrity, quality, and service. And I've thought a lot about those values, because it means something when it's related to a business and how you run a business. But the business is gone. It's closed. The store is gone. We've moved on. But I'm still working through, what do those things mean? And the one that has really started to stand out to me is integrity. What does that mean? And I think integrity means wholeness. What is part of your, the integral parts of you and who you are becoming. So if we can be a part of each other's becoming more whole and finding these it's like a diamond, finding new facets of yourself through another person, that is an incredible, first of all, an adventure to be on, to just unfolding into your own wholeness, and to be a part of you, Brittany, as you're unfolding. And now we are all kind of doing that together. I mean, I think we all felt that on our last call, which was just a practice call for this. No one else is listening, but we're all becoming more ourselves and living into our ability to be our whole selves in this very powerful way. And so it is a very spiritual idea, but also just, it's something you can do every day, lean a little bit more into your wholeness. And what does that mean? What does that look like? And I think the fact that this story unites us, it's a part of who we are now, but it was just a starting point for us to start becoming, who you see today, but then also who we're becoming, which I feel like we're not done.
Yeah. Well, I know I know we threw it out there, something, food for thought. And I don't know the layout of where the museum is and where things are, and how often people come in and out, or if there's ever been a podcast coming from the museums. You're new, so you're doing new things. But I just don't know if you're open to that. I'm not afraid. The thing is, you can't be afraid of truth and justice, because it may take you places you've never been before. And so I am not afraid, and I don't want little E to be afraid, because we have something to say. So I got your back, as they say.
So I know that we're running out of time. We got about 7 minutes left.
Let's talk about it. To be talked about later.
So we got a few minutes left, and I want to wrap up, because I know that we'll end up on here for another couple of hours, the way that we like to talk.
I think she just launched a podcast.
I think she's launching the podcast. Which, you know what? Anything that could lead to me talking to y'all every day, I'm happy to do. So I want to go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank you both again and a million more times for sharing your story and just having this conversation with us. It's such a beautiful thing to see the two of you shining your lights together and really just changing the way that we think about how history can impact us all. I can't stress enough how inspiring you both are, and constantly moved. I'm not going to cry. And constantly moved I am by both of you. And I also want to invite our visitors to come out to our next Curators at Work presentation on November 11th to commemorate Veterans Day. And so before we wrap up, we have I think 4 minutes or so left, maybe time for one more question to answer. Is there anything that you wish folks knew, super quick, you just want to have our listeners just take with them today? Any one last thing? Either of you can start.
Mm.
You know what? There is one thing I really want to share, and I don't think it's ever really been shared publicly, but I found a speech that was given in 1967 by Thalhimers to the AMC, which was it was the store principals from every major retailer in that merchandising corporation, which was like every major retailer in the country. But they talked about how this had become really personal for them, this idea of integrating. And it was kind of like, get with the program. Like, this is where we're headed. And it was really a powerful speech. I don't know how much I want to read of it, but I just feel like I wanted to share that this exists. And I'm going to share it with you, Brittany, because I feel like the museum needs to have it.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that quietly, without any media attention, there were people working very hard on things that no one ever knew about, like making sure Black leaders were elected into council positions in the city. Thalhimers finding a way to make sure that this wasn't like white people making decisions for everyone. This was like finding a way that Black leaders could be part of the conversation. Like, let us know kind of what your community needs and what you need from us. It was a really interesting speech. So I feel like that's something that I want to share at some point that nobody really knows about. And I've been sort of sitting on it, and I've just been thinking about it, but it is important to know all the things that happen in the background that were quiet, that were about integrating in a really slow, mindful way beyond just saying the store is open to all. Like, now, how are we going to get to the next place? How are we all going to be at the same table to have important community conversations, which of course we're still trying to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
But I love seeing that this was happening in 1967 with companies from all over the country. That makes me really proud, actually. My grandfather's not with us, and he always really kept this very quiet. He wouldn't answer questions about it because he knew it was still very contentious and his remarks could be really taken out of place. But I kind of want people to know now what he did quietly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Biggie's got the idea.
Well, the thing,
podcast.
She's gonna have a podcast.
Well, the thing. I mean, my grandparents and all were civil rights activists way back when, and they were treated unfairly. I mean, he was an Episcopal priest, one of the first Black Episcopal priests in the United States, and my grandmother was very stately, and she reminds me. I think I showed you a picture. She reminds me of Eleanor Roosevelt in terms of her statue and her hair. She cut her hair in that same style. And so it's just, and then my brother, he's dealing with spiritual truths right now. And I'm talking to him and he's saying, but you have the people, you can talk to people, you need to share good things with them. So I'm being told that from so many corners. They need to hear you. They need to hear what you're saying and people that you're with. So, I know the book is important, and I know that I have to use my voice, and even down to my singing voice. I didn't think I would ever bring that out again, but I find myself singing these. As a matter of fact, the person, Wells Hanley, called me day before yesterday, saying the lady that sang the song on your podcast, Second Chance, is going to be in concert soon, and maybe you'd like to come. I said, yeah, I'd love to come see her. And so he said, I want you to learn that song now, Elizabeth, because I'm going to play it for you again. And I've got other songs I want you to learn so we can do this album. I said, what?
I have to back up 1 second. This is my friend.
We have like 15 seconds left.
Quick pitch. My friend Wells Hanley has a podcast called I Wrote This Song for You, and he wrote a song for Biggie.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I think that's a great place to stop. We have 2
Right.
seconds left, you guys. I'm so sorry. We got 2 seconds left.
Now,
Well, the future's looking at us. What are we going to do about it?
We're going to wrap up today. Again, thank you both so much for joining me, and I can't wait to our next chat. So everyone out there watching, have a wonderful afternoon, and thanks for joining us.
We look forward to seeing you the next time.